Okay, we are on. Okay. Learning sponsors, the Year of Learning, Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Asna Bad Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, L'Zecha Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Me'aleib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. Friends of Leonie Meiserman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanok Zundel. A Month of Learning by Sam and Shifra Coleman in memory of his mother, Sarah Rachel Bas Abraham, by Ron and Susan Podolsky in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Pinchas. A Week of Learning by Judy and Ari Cohen in memory of her mother, Hinda Bat Moshe Zechariah Halevi, and his mother, Fega Bas Yechiel. Chaim Aber in memory of his wife, Esther Bas Yaakov. Manny Workman in memory of his wife, Chaya Sarah Bat Alter Yosef. Amen. Okay, a day of learning, today being the, let me just check the date real quick. Today is the 21st, right?
You got it.
Okay, so we don't have any days of learning scheduled much today. Okay. All right. Whoa.
I looked at 18 inches of snow in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. Yeah.
Okay.
Teddy, did you see my girlfriend also?
No, I didn't see her. Who's your girlfriend?
You asked too many questions, Mr. Greenberg. Years ago, I started teaching camps. So the camp, it was a camp in our room, now it's called Camp Bunham. It's in Waymore, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So Teddy's two grandsons were there from Minneapolis.
Uh-huh.
I was taking them to the airport, and the rabbi in Minneapolis was in Cola and Scranton.
Yeah.
His wife's a Tart.
Yeah.
So I said to the boys, were what, 10 or 11? I don't know how old they were. On the way, I said, by the way, how's my girlfriend? Oh, give my girlfriend my regard. Who's your girlfriend? I said, so. Huh? 2 weeks later, I'm on 95 grade. I get a phone call. Hello, this is your girlfriend.
I remember the house I went, there was a guy in
Right, Teddy?
Minneapolis, his name was Bob Feller. So I want you to know Bob Feller, the great pitcher.
Right, sure.
He went to cover with us.
Come on. He was the same guy who was a pitcher, actually.
No.
But his name was Bob Feller.
Yeah, that name is for those of us of a certain generation, that name is very well.
I'm a Charlie Keller. Irwin.
Charlie got an L in here.
Irwin.
Yeah. Okay.
Good old days.
My father threw me the first baseball game.
Yeah.
You were in St. Louis?
Yeah.
You were a rabbi in St. Louis? 1946, Yankee Stadium. The New York Yankees played the St. Louis Browns.
Wow.
St. Louis Browns. They were always terrible.
How many years?
The worst team.
76 years.
Remember?
Goodness.
We were Dodger fans in Brooklyn and the Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinals were bad guys.
In front of the park in St. Louis, they have this big metal statue of Stan Musial.
Stand up, man.
Yeah.
Lenore, Pennsylvania.
You know, and one of the nice things they did, the Cardinals, I will have to say this, then we got to get back to tomorrow. After the first home game, they would send to all clergy who are interested free seats in the, not box seats, in the bleachers, in the grandstand, free seats to go any game. And you could bring a guest even. So every season, I used to bring at least one of my boys to see a game, the Cardinals home game.
Country Slaughter, isn't it?
Okay. Slaughter, yeah. And we couldn't get, to see a lot of them, but it was.
No. One. And right now, Teddy is 1.5.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Anyone
cha-
can be 1.5 Teddy.
okay. All right, welcome back again to those who have just rejoined us. Okay, I assume our numbers will be increasing over the next few days. Okay, couple of quick announcements, just to remind everybody. Bob, I'm going to rely on you also. Given David's announcement this morning, it means we have to move the daf tomorrow from the base medrash. So we'll meet in here. Okay, so, yeah, right, so anybody you see from the crowd that usually comes on Shabbos, let them know that, and not so. Number two, our siyum is planned at Century Grill for Wednesday at 4:00. Please let either Mel or Bob know. And number three, just a reminder that as of Thursday morning, Nadarim is the new Masechet, and Michael and Ruvain will be doing the shiur for those couple weeks that I'm away.
Tell the girls how to spell
Starting
Gomorrah.
with the Dara?
What?
Have you start with the Dara?
Yeah, they're going to start right with Nadarim.
Yeah, they spelled the word Gomorrah in the newsletter.
Yeah, Andrea did. I'll have to look back again. Okay. Okay, so today we're going to start, we're going to get started. Misha halach l'Medina Hayam, right on the very bottom of Kaf Vav Amud Beis, the last line. Okay, that's where we're starting. All right, and then we're going to pick up. Now, we just for those who, whether you've been able to follow Daf or not, this whole parak moves away from the actual discussion of ksuba and to other issues of law, a court, judges, things like that. That has ramifications, but nevertheless, the point is we'll see some other issues coming up within that context, all right? So let's assume we're saying that the man left for a business trip, okay? The assumption of the Gemara is that a husband ideally would not leave his wife without money for food in that time, okay? Because we said basically our assumption is that if this kind of a trip would last at least minimally a month, okay? So what happens? Itmar, about this it was said as follows, Rav Amar, says Rav, what happens if he did not leave her adequate amount of money for during his travels, right? Poskin mezonot li eshet ish, that we do set aside and determine. In other words, posek here means we make a stipulation that there's a certain amount of money that we may take from his estate in order to provide her with mezonos. Okay? Ushmuel Amar ein poskin mezonot le'eshet ish. But Shmuel says we do not do that. We do not necessarily grant a specific allowance for her. Okay? Now, this machloket between Rav and Shmuel becomes the main focus for a good part of this Amud. Okay? So what happens? Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Modeli Abba, that Rav agrees with me Bishlosha chodashim harishonim, regarding the first 3 months. In other words, it's a long business trip if he's going to be gone, right? That extended period of time. So the first 3 months, we assume he's certainly going to leave her money. Okay? Lafisha ein adam maniach beito reikan, because a man does not leave his household, implying his wife, without funds for providing sustenance. Okay, b'shesham-o bo shomei, but in a situation where she hears a rumor that he dies on this business trip, right? Kuli amalo plige. Nobody disagrees, okay? Implying that in that case, if they don't disagree, the answer would be that they would give her at least sustenance. And it's possible, the Gemara is hinting, but doesn't come right out and tell us, that they might even give her, in addition to sustenance, her ksuba, right? But we'll see. Okay, let's go on. Ki pligi, where do they argue? Bishelo shamu bo shemet. If she did not hear that he died, in other words, if the rumor is questionable. Rav Amar poskin, Rav still says in that situation, we do set an allowance for her. Okay, Misha, right? Why? Mishuabad la. Why? Because there is, if there's the possibility that he's still alive, then he has a requirement to provide her mazonos. If there's a possibility that he's dead, and the rumor is true, then what? She has the lien from her ksuba on the fact that the estate should provide her money. So this is Rav's thinking, right? All right. What happened though? Shmuel Amar ein poskin. But Shmuel still says we do not allocate her that allowance. My Tama, what's the reasoning that Shmuel holds that way? Rav Zavid attempts to explain Shmuel's view and says as follows: Ema tsrare it pasa. I'll say that he deposited coins with the woman in advance of his trip, and therefore we should not have to allocate an allowance, right? Now, a different explanation. Rav Papa Amar, says Rav Papa, Chayshinan Shema Amarla, perhaps before he left on his trip, he said to her, Se'i ma'aseh yadayich b'mezonotayich. In other words, he could have removed whatever rights he has to his earnings, and therefore he no longer has the requirement to support her. Okay? My benaihu, what's the difference between the explanation given by Rav Zavid and the explanation of Rav Papa? Namely, Ika benaihu gedola velo safka. One difference between them was that the woman is of a majority age, his wife, but the money that was left for him was not sufficient. Okay, and that's why Rav would say you do have to give the allowance.
Money that was left.
In other words, that she is an adult woman.
She's working.
No, not necessarily working. Doesn't mean she's working, but that the money that if he had left money for her, it wasn't sufficient to cover her expenses for the entire time he's away.
But they're saying over here that her earnings do not go
No,
to him.
that's a different explanation.
Oh,
Okay, one was Rav Papa, one was Rav Zavid. Rav Zavid said he left her a bundle of money.
yeah.
Okay, Rav Papa said no. He just told her, I don't want your earnings anymore. Therefore, I have no responsibility to provide you sustenance. In other words, otherwise, right. And the Gemara says, what's the difference between their two explanations?
Why do you use the word earnings on?
Maaseh yadeha is what it refers to. In other words, the woman was right. She was expected to sew or to do certain things, what we would call cottage industry, right? That was basically the concept. Okay. Okay. Inami, or perhaps another difference in their two explanations, kitana usafka, that she's a minor, okay, and there was enough money. Okay. Why? Because the answer is a husband, even who has a minor wife as a age-wise minor, is not going to hand her over a whole bundle of coins, of money. Okay, so that's the point. Tnan. Now we get to a new Mishnah. Shmi shehalach lemedinat hayam. Vishto tovat mizonot, one who traveled overseas, we assume for business, and his wife demands sustenance. Chanan Amar, according to Chanan, Tishava b'sof v'lo tishava b'tchila. She must make an oath, okay, at the beginning. In other words, when she demands the money for the sustenance, right, that she doesn't have any money or adequate money, but she doesn't have to make an oath at the end when, if the rumor of his death is true, she need not make an oath that she ever received any money for her ksuba.
I thought it said teacher of so.
No, he says Tisha B'Sof. I'm sorry. Let me flip that. Tisha B'Sof v'lo Tisha B'Tchila. That she doesn't have to make an oath for the sustenance, but she would have to make an oath for the ksuba money because we don't know for sure whether the rumor is true or not. Okay. All right. So what happened? Says this Mishnah. Nechlaku alav b'nei kohanim gedolim, that the sons of the great Kohen Gadol disagreed with him. V'amru, and they said, Tishava b'tchila uvaso, that she must take an oath both at the beginning and at the end. Namely, she has to make an oath to be able to get the sustenance money. She has to take an oath to be able to get ketubah money. Okay? All right. Thank you for correcting me, sir. Adkan lo plige ela le'inyan shvua. Up to this point, it would appear that the argument between Hanan and the Bnei Kohanim is only in regards to when she needs to take an oath. Okay? Aval mezone, but in regards to providing her money for sustenance, Yahavin and La, we give it to her. Okay? So that's what seems to be the point at this example. However, the Gemara is not satisfied because we still have this issue of the machloket between Rav and Shmuel. And so the Gemara continues. Tirgama Shmuel. Shmuel would explain it as follows. Bisham Sham-o bo Shemet. This all occurs when there's a rumor about his having died. Tashma. Okay, so Shmuel is putting a condition on the situation. Okay, let's see what happens. So the new Braita comes and tells us, Misha alach l'medinat hayam v'ishto tovat mizonot. One who traveled overseas in order, let's assume what we said, business, and the wife comes to the based in, and she's demanding money for sustenance. B'nei kohanim gedolim omrim, they say, tishava, right? That she must make an oath. Hanan omer lo tishava. According to the Braita, she does not have to make any oath. So this Braita is radically different than the Mishnah we just saw. V'im ba v'amar. But if he were to come back, says the Braita, and say, pasakti la mizonot, okay, that he says to the court, I did set aside specific money as an allowance for her, ne'aman, he is to be believed. Hachanami, here too, keshesham o bo shemet. Here again, we're saying on the condition that there was a rumor that he had died. Vaha imba v'amar kama. But our Braita said, if he comes back and says, that's what it told us. So the Gemara explains, imba la'achar shmu'a. If he comes back after the rumor has spread. That's what it refers to. Tashma, says the Gemara. How about the following Braita? Misha lach l'medinat hayam, bishto tovat mizonot. Somebody went overseas again and his wife demands sustenance. V'im ba va'amar, if he comes back and says, Se'i ma'aseh yadech b'mezonotayach rashai. Okay, if he were to say, I take your own handiwork, in other words, keep your earnings, okay, Heshi, right? And use that for your food. In other words, use that for your sustenance, right? Rashai, it's permitted for him to say that to her.
But this is when he comes back.
Right.
So what does she do in the interim? It doesn't
Ah, good question. Let's see if the Gemara addresses that step. Okay. So what happens? Okay, says the Gemara, Kadmu Beitin Upasku. Before that, right? The court came, right? They went to the court, right? And they established an allowance. Masha Pasku, Pasku. What they set as the allowance, they set. Okay. Hachanami. Here too, Bishasham Obo Shamei. Here also, it may be a situation where there was a rumor that he died. So in other words, the court could act, okay, in the interim time while he was away, based on her claim that maybe she says, I heard a rumor that he died, and the court then can go ahead and claim a part of his estate for her welfare.
But if there's no rumor, no one grants support.
We're gonna see more to this.
All right.
Okay, all right, because we're going to get to a further example, okay, where it could be more than just a rumor, but without adequate proof. What kind of a situation might that be? The Gemara is going to tell us what happens if Eid Echad comes and reports that he died.
But I'm thinking of the example where no one says anything about a rumor, and he went away for several months. So she has to she should have to swear that he.
So that's what the machloket between Hanan and the Bnei Kohanim is. Okay, she would have to take an oath, okay, that either he did not leave me sustenance money or he didn't leave me adequate sustenance money. Okay, but remember, we're talking about a community where you're also dealing with lifestyle. Okay, it's one thing, if she was a poorer woman or a middle income, so to speak, and he was traveling on business. All right, it could be that she ran out of the funds, but that depends on what the lifestyle she was living. What happens? Tashma, new brighter. Mishalach l'medinat hayam v'ishto tovat mezonot. Again, he travels and the woman demands money for sustenance. Beit din yordim l'nechasav v'zanin u'mefarnasim le'ishto. Very clear from this bright that the Beit Din can actually take from his estate and provide, right, for the wife. Avalo banav uvnotav, says this bright, but not his sons or his daughters. Velo davar acher, and not for anything else. Okay, so the Gemara, of course, is going to come up, as we'll hit today, to see what does it mean, but from this Braita, davar acher. That's good, but we'll hold off on that in a moment.
What about the sons and daughters?
Gemara is going to, now the Gemara has to address that immediately, right? Okay, so what happens? Amar Rav Sheshet, says Rav Sheshet, b'misra et ishto, okay, al yedei shalish, but that could be a situation where he appointed like a steward, a guard, not a guy, apotropos, a steward. What? He gave his lawyer what do you call it? Power of attorney, okay, to pay her expenses.
If he's home.
If the basic assumption is, if he's home and he is receiving her earnings, he has a responsibility to pay any sustenance for her sustenance.
For his children.
And generally, we've seen in the past that for minor children. Okay,
Pre-bar mitzvah.
all right. So the Gemara is going to come back to this question. Okay, so what happens if he's let's say he's appointed a guardian for the wife, okay, to provide her food. So the Gemara asks precisely your question, Zev. Ihachi banavu v'nav tavnami. Right? That's your point, Zev. Right? What about the children? Shouldn't they also have been included in that guardianship? Right? So the Gemara says, Kasher hisra lazo v'lo hisra lazo. Maybe he made a guardian simply to cover her household expenses, okay, and assume that from that she would take care of the children, and he didn't make a separate guardianship for the children. My Pascha. So then what do we mean then when we say that he set an allowance? Ela Amar Rav Papa. But rather Rav Papa says, Kasher Sham'a Bo Shemet Be'ed Echad. It's a situation where she heard the rumor, okay, or of a single witness. Okay. All right. All right. So why is this? You left your hat in the shul? All right, we'll go back and get it. All right.
My son with my glasses.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
I'll catch up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, so why is this significant that Rav Papa would try to explain it this way? He, the guardianship regarding her, the wife, de'ibayet in sube ba'ed echad, because it's possible that she is able to remarry based on the testimony of one witness. Okay, matze min sabe, all right, and if she comes and remarries, mizone nami yahavinan la. Okay, therefore the new husband would be obligated to provide her sustenance. Banavu v'notav, but the children, de'iba'u l'mechat l'nechasav ba'ed echad, that regarding the children, if it were necessary to descend on his estate by one witness, lo matzu nechate. Okay, they are not able to use the testimony there of one witness in order to take money from his estate to cover for the children.
So they're supposed to starve.
No, mezone nami lo yahavina lo, and therefore they can't use that money for the right to provide sustenance for us to give to them. Okay, in other words. Question then the court would have to decide, okay, whose responsibility is it? Okay, so the Gemara asks, right? My devar acher. What about the fact in that Braita that they referred to that they could not take the money, okay, for anything else? Rav Chisda Amar Tachshit. Rav Chisda says it was for jewelry. Right. Rav Yosef Amar tzedakah, and Rav Yosef said it was to have money to be able to give for charity. Okay. Now, why say that she should be able to? Okay, why the issue of tachshit? Okay, and one explanation was shalo yemenuval. Okay, that if she doesn't have extra money to pay for jewelry and things like that, right? She's not going to attract a second husband. That's the point. Okay. Manda Amar Tachshit, the one who said no money for jewelry, Kol Shekain, how much more so as we go to the next Talmud Tzedakah. Certainly then they wouldn't have money for charity. Manda Amar Tzedakah, but the one who says no extra money for charity, Aval Tachshit, Yahavinim La, the lo nechalai, the tinavul, right? And whereas why the jewelry? so that she would not be degraded. In other words, and look in a status that nobody else would be interested in marrying her. That even the deceased husband wouldn't want that to happen. Okay, all right. Again, notice, by the way, the amount of certain protections that the system really has for women here. Okay, it may seem at times problematic, okay, as some would argue, but there really is a lot of concern here, okay, given the nature of their society. Let's go on. Tashma. Let's take another example with a Braita. Hayevama. We all know that's the woman waiting to see whether her Yavam is going to perform, right? What he's going to do. Is he going to perform Yibum or Chalitza? Okay. What happens? Shlosha chodashim harishonim. For the first 3 months, Nizonet Mishel Ba'ala. She is provided sustenance from the estate of her deceased, or let's call it deceased husband, right? Mechan ve'elech, from that point on, Eina nozenet lo Mishel Ba'ala v'lo Mishel Yabam. After the 3 months, she is not provided sustenance either from her husband's estate or from the brother-in-law. Why? Because we assume that at that point, she should have, after 3 months, a certain amount of ma'aseh yadeha that she can use herself. Okay. Amad badin ubarach. Let's say what happens that the Yabam skip town, right? Okay. Nizonet Mishel Yabam. Then the court can take money from the brother-in-law's property, okay, and feed this Yabama. Okay. Amar lach Shmuel. So Shmuel's response to this bright, Lamai nichush la lahai. For what reason should we suspect her, okay, in this situation? Imishum tsurare, if we say that she has bundles of coins from the deceased first husband, lo mikrava da'ate legaba. Okay, then as far as the Yabam is concerned, right, we should not have to come close to anything to deal with him. In other words, it shouldn't be an issue. Imishum ma'aseh yadeha, if it's talking about a situation of her own earnings, lo mishtabda la, then she has no lien, no claim. Okay, so that was Shmuel's argument. New Mishnah, new Braita. Tashma. Listen to the following Braita again. Ha'isha shehalcha hi uba'ala l'medinat hayam. Now she and her husband go. They're on a cruise or on their whatever there is. Okay, and they travel. Right? Uba'a va'amra. She comes back now alone to the Beis Din and says to them, Mate ba'ali. My husband died while on the trip. Okay, what happens? Says the Gemara. Ratzta. If she chooses, nizonet. Okay, the Beis Din will decide to provide her sustenance. Ratzta, govak tubata. If instead she wants to end that relationship, okay, and she can collect her ksuba. So she, okay, right, has it either way. She gets money, right?
In other words, if she has no children, she has the option.
Well, even if she has children, she has the option, right? Because either way, she's going to get money. Either she's going to get money for sustenance for herself and children, or she's going to get the ketubah money, okay? So that again would be for her and whatever children, okay? The advantage of her getting the ketubah would be, it could be more money, but better than that, it means she's on the market again, okay? She's available for marriage, okay? Okay, now, what happens if the woman came back and tells the Beis Din the following? Girashani Bali. While we were out of town, my husband divorced me at one of the ports, right? What happened? Right? Mitparneset v'holechet ad kedei ketubata. Okay, so the court then will decide that she does receive some sustenance up to the amount of her ketubah. Okay, hachanami. Here too, says the Gemara, we might use Shmuel's condition and say, right, keshesham o bo shemei, if there was a rumor that he died. Umaishna, and what's the difference here? Ad kedei ketubata, that we would say that it was up to the amount of her ketubah. In other words, she's entitled to the ketubah. And if she was really divorced, it's due her, right? But if he hadn't died, okay, then she's entitled to money because he would still be required to sustain her, right? The Gemara tells us, the ihihi, the afsida anafshe. Why? Because otherwise, we're going to say that she herself, by announcing that she was divorced, it doesn't give her those options, the two choices, money here, money there. It only leaves the one choice, just ketubah money, right? Okay, let's go on. Tashma, we come now to another bright. Ketzad amru mam enet. What about, they said, in a situation where the young woman refuses to continue in the marriage? Ein la mizonot. On what basis do we say that she does not receive any money for sustenance? If you were to say that this occurred during the time that she was still, let's say, living in the household of her husband, after all, her husband is still obligated to provide her sustenance, even though she refuses to be married to him. Ella, rather, but we must be talking about a situation where the husband went overseas. And what happened then? Lavta, she borrowed money, ve'achla, okay, and used that money for her sustenance. Amda, then she decided she did not longer want to be married to him. Umeana, and she refused. Okay. Tama, what's the reason? Demiana. Why? Because she refused. Ha lo miana, but had she not refused, yahavinanla, we would give her the money, because she would then still be chayav to receive money as mizonos, as sustenance. Shmuel, however, responds, Amar lach Shmuel. Shmuel, yes. Right. Yeah. Okay, that's what we said. I would think that she would need a kasuba. Remember, minor in that situation meant that she was married off. It's a rabbinic marriage, right, assuming she was married by her mother and brothers. Okay, as opposed to a deraita, which would be if it was done by the father. Okay? So Amar lach Shmuel. Shmuel thou responds to this new situation of the me'ana. Hacha l'mayni chushla. Why do we have to even suspect this situation? Imishum tsrare. If again I say he may have given her coins, tsrari l'katana lo matpis. A bag of coins for a minor, we don't set aside any allowance. Okay? In other words, it's not usually done. And again, if you're talking about her own earnings, kitana lo safka, a minor, okay, does not usually earn enough. Okay, so here what happens? All right, that seems to be the case. right? So there could be no resolution at this point still to the machloket between Rav and Shmuel. So the Gemara asks now, as it usually does after such a discussion, Mai Havala. So what's the end result? Okay, what happens next? Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi comes, he says, Maaseh balefnei Rabbi beveit sharim. An incident, right? An actual occurrence came before Rebbe in Beit Sharim, Vu pasak la mizonot, and he set an allowance for the wife. Okay? Lefnei Rabbi Yishmael b'tzipori. A similar actual incident came before Rabbi Yishmael in Sipori, in Sepphoris, Velo pasak la mizonot, and he did not set a specific allowance for her. So the Gemara says, Tehi ba Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan then pondered and wondered about this scenario. Okay, here you have these two major authorities. One acted one way, one acted the opposite way. V'chi ma ra'ah Rabbi Yishmael shelo pasak la mizonot. And this is what he's wondering. What was it that Rabbi Yishmael then decided not to set an allowance for her? Right? Ha lo nichlaku b'nei kohanim gedolim v'chanan ela le'inyan shvua. But our Mishnah had already told us earlier that the difference, the argument between Hanan and the Bnei Kohanim was really only regards to whether she needed to take, when she needed to take an oath. Aval mazone yahavinam la. But they both agreed, basically, that the mazonos we had to give her. Amar le Rav Shaman bar Abba. He says as follows. Excuse me. Okay, Far Tirgama Rabbeinu Shmuel Bavel. His answer is that our master Shmuel already explained this in Babylonia. Kesheshamu bo shemei. Okay, that there was a rumor as to whether or not the husband was deceased. So the Gemara then comes back. Okay, and it's right, Rabbi Yochanan who could ask the question, Amarle, Patritu ba kuli hai. You're saying you're solving it so easily. So the Gemara goes on. Ki ata Ravin, when Ravin came, Amar maaseh ba lefnei Rabbi beveit sha'arim v'lo paskula mazono. He comes back and tells the exact opposite. The switching of the story, that a real incident came before Rebbe in Beit Sharim, and he did not set an allowance for the wife. Lefnei Rebbe Yishmael b'tzipori, and before Rebbe Yishmael in Sepphoris, upasak la mizonot, and he did set an allowance for the wife. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan again is wondering, Ma ra'ah Rebbe shelo pasakhu. What might be the reason that Rebbe did not set an allowance for her? Daha lo nichlaku Hanan b'nei u'b'nei kohanim gedolim ela le'inyan shvua, because Hanan and b'nei kohanim did not disagree except in the matter of an oath. Avam mezonot yahavinam la. But it said that the food, the money for foodstuffs, we give her. Amar le Rav Shemen bar Abba. So Rav Shemen bar Abba responds to Rabbi Yochanan. Kfar tirgema Shmuel b'Bavel. Rav Shmuel already explained and interpreted this in Babylonia. Kesheshamu bo shemei, that there was a rumor that the husband had died. Amarle, and Rabbi Yochanan responds, Patritu ba kulihai. You solved it so easily. You think that's a valid solution? So now the Gemara goes on and spells out for us. V'hilchata kivate de Rav. The law is like that of Rav in this case, who said, remember, that you do set the allowance for the woman. Uposkin mizonot le'eshet ish. And we do set an allowance for foodstuffs for the wife. Furthermore, v'hilchata kivate de Rav Huna amar Rav, that the law is also like Rav Huna in the name of Rav. The amar Rav Huna amar Rav, who said the name of Rav, yichola isha she'amar leba'ala. It's possible for the wife to say to her husband, Eini nizonet ve'eini osa. I don't want, I'm going to phrase it that way, I don't need or don't want your sustenance, and I'm not working to be able to give you money, earnings towards the household. In other words, I'm going to keep my own earnings and use that to pay for what I need. An independent woman kind of view, right? Vehilchata.
So if he dies, that doesn't change.
Oh no, if he dies, okay, they had a ketubah.
Yeah.
So she would still get money from the ketubah. Right. Vehilchata kevate de Rav Zavid. And the law is also like Rav Zavid, bakunya, in regards to glazed vessels. The Amar Rav Zavid, as Rav Zavid says, Hani mani de kunya, these glazed vessels, chivare v'uchme, if they're white and red, right? Black and red, sharo are permitted. Yeruke asuyre, if they're greenish in color, they're forbidden, or greenish yellowish, they're forbidden. Velo amran ela delit baho kartufne. And we say in that case, right, that it's not a situation when they don't have cracks. Aval it baho kartufne. But if the earthenware vessels have cracks, asire, then they are forbidden. Okay. Now, let's go on. We'll just do the Mishnah. All right? All right. Neat Mishnah goes on back again. Notice what we're going to see now in this case. Mishalach l'medinat hayam. Husband went on a travel, right? Va'amad echad upirnes et ishto. Okay, and neighbor. All right, we'll put it that way. We won't say boyfriend. All right, somebody else. Maybe it's a member of the family, right? Another member of the family comes and he pays her sustenance while her husband is away. Okay, but what happens when the husband comes back? What is he going to want?
Wants the money back.
He wants his money back. Exactly. All right. That's the case. Upirnes et ishto. Chanan omer, says Chanan, ibed et ma'otav. He's out of the money. He does not get it back. Nechlaku alav b'nei kohanim gedolim. And again, okay, the b'nei kohanim, okay, disagreed. Va'amru, and they said, Yishava kama hotzi vayito, that he should take an oath how much he spent on the sustenance of the man's wife, and then he should be able to take it from the man's estate. Amar Rav Dusa ben Hirkinus kidivrehem. And Rav Dusa ben Hirkinus agrees with that statement. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Yafeh Amar Chanan. Chanan said correctly, Hiniach ma'otav al keren hatzvi. It's like he did no different than hang his money on the ears of a deer, okay? On the horns, I'm sorry, of a deer. In other words, the same way the deer, hasta la vista, right, goes, so the money has flown as well. All right, so we'll stop there. And tomorrow's daf, we'll pick up.
In other words, if people know what the din is, and they know that they're not going to get their money back.
But we'll have to see what happens in this mission, whether what's going to be.
Or this is just the motion?
That's just the
Mishnah,
Mishnah. Okay.
Oh, well, that one little paragraph there about the earthenware and glass vessels.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with the.
It seemed to have nothing to do. Okay,
Like it's just completely separate. It looks like it's just a completely separate subject. I think is what it's saying. I thought there was something. I thought there was
right.
something-
My connection would be the same way that she can say to her husband, okay, I'm going to keep my earnings and therefore I don't need to contribute to the household income. All right. My approach would be, she can say to her husband, these and these dishes are usable, but this kind is not. And if these kind are cracked, then can't use these either. But that's the only connection that I could think of.
This doesn't even attempt to make a connection. It says it's a third matter, not a third.
Right.
Third interpretation of the same. It's a third matter. I don't know what-